Have you ever heard stories from people who survived the Nazis and never understood what was happening or why? This discrepancy was a major problem for certain ideologies and races. This documentary will cover the Holocaust, what happened during that time, and how it still affects people today.
The Holocaust took place in German-occupied Europe between 1941 and 1945. The Holocaust was the systematic, state-sponsored persecution for the murder of 6 million European Jews by the Nazi regime and its allies and collaborators. Between 1941 and 1945, the Nazis attempted to annihilate all of Europe's Jews and other minorities. The Nazis used propaganda, persecution, violence, and legislation to deny human and civil rights to Jews. The main figures of the Holocaust were Adolf Hitler, his Nazi group, non-Jewish Poles, and people with disabilities, and anyone else who did not fit into Hitler's pure society.
After World War I in 1918, there was a massive social and political change. In this post-war environment, extreme nationalism, racism, and anti-Semitism erupted immensely. The Nazi Italian Fascist Party and other similar groups became verbal threats to new and fragile democracies, including Germany's Weimar Republic. After Adolf Hitler was appointed German Chancellor, Germany and its allies transferred Germany from a multi-party republic into a one-party dictatorship. The Nazi dictatorship implanted extreme racial, political, and social policies. During the first 6 years of Hitler's rule, German Jews felt the effects of the new government that transferred them from citizens to outcasts. The persecution of Jews in Germany began in 1933, almost immediately after the Nazis came to power. During the 6 years of World War II, Hitler's systematic, state-sponsored, and government-organized persecution resulted in the deaths of 6 million European Jews and 5 million non-Jews across the continent.
Some primary sources are the Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies, which provides access to testimonies of over 4,400 interviews of Holocaust survivors collected from 1979 and onward.
Correspondence from Nazi concentration camps consists of items originating from prisoners held in Germany, concentration camps, internment and transit camps, Gestapo prisoners, and POW camps. Most of the collections consist of letters written or received by prisoners, but it also includes receipts or money orders and personal effects, paper currency, and objects including the Star of David badges that Jews were forced to wear.
Now we're going to have a report on a survivor of the Holocaust.
What do you remember from the outbreak of the war?
I remember in 1942, the French police loudly knocked on my door. They asked where my dad was, but because he was arrested, he went and hid from them. Then the rescue network came and took me and my sister. We were put into a small room with just a stale piece of bread and water.
Describe your life in the camps.
We had to work through rough conditions. It was overcrowded and sleeping was uncomfortable. We weren't allowed to have cleaning or hygiene items, and there was a lack of water and clean clothes. I was so happy on the day of the camp's liberation when I finally got to leave.
How was your first day of freedom?
Life was very hard for me after the war. I was without my parents for years. We didn't have any money. We decided to move to Israel and stayed in a camp called the Grand Arenas. It was a very scary time for me and my family.
There are still survivors alive today who can retell their terrifying experiences in the Holocaust, and it's very important that we listen to them because their stories are reliable, first-hand accounts. Okay, that's all for our interview. Back to Becca and Adrina for more information.
On September 1st, 1939, Nazi Germany unleashed World War II by invading Poland. In the parts of Poland that were occupied, German authorities established ghettos for Jews, introduced harsh measures against non-Jewish Poles, and gas chambers to kill people with disabilities. In June 1941, German troops invaded the Soviet Union, unleashing a racial war that led to the mass murder of Soviet Jews and Soviet prisoners of war. In the months that followed, Nazi Germany leaders decided to carry out the synthetic mass murders of European Jews. By early 1942, Germany and its allies controlled the most of Europe and even parts of North Africa. They established special killing centers with large gas chambers, expanding the mass murder of European Jews.
They counted on the cooperation of government agencies, local collaborators, and the support of the general population. Even as the war turned against Germany, the Nazi leadership continued its murderous policies. By May 1945, when the war ended, the Nazis and their allies had killed about 6 million Jews. Millions more people had suffered through grief and oppression under the Nazi tyranny. After World War II, millions of people were uprooted and now displaced persons, waiting to enter their home countries. For tens of thousands of Holocaust survivors, the choices were limited and daunting. Allied occupation forces faced enormous responsibilities: housing and feeding DPs, democratizing Germany, and bringing those responsible for Nazi crimes to justice.
Daily life in concentration camps. The Nazis used concentration camps to impose their power and control. Because of the harsh treatment, extremely difficult forced labor, and lack of nutrition, although it wasn't exactly intended, many prisoners died in concentration camps. The prisoners were separated by age and gender. They were dehumanized in camps and stripped of their identities. Life under German occupation.
By May 1940, Hitler almost had all of Europe in Nazi control. In German-occupied Europe, many people tried to escape to other countries, but it was challenging because of the strict border limits, small amounts of resources, and the course of punishment that would soon follow if they were caught. During the Holocaust, even the people who were not Jewish or in the targeted groups faced many challenges. They were under strict German rule and had to follow rules imposed by the Nazis. Some citizens would help rescue the targeted groups or hide them from the Nazis. In Germany, the Nazi Party targeted and manipulated children through the schooling systems and propaganda. They were taught to glorify the Aryan race and love Hitler while following his rules.
In conclusion, any citizen under German control faced adversity, but the life of prisoners in concentration camps was unimaginable and horrific.
The Holocaust had many short-term impacts, but it is still affecting and shaping our world today. Because of Hitler's rule, Jews and other minorities were forced to live in camps far away from their original homes in Germany. They were captured and put into these concentration camps until they were either killed or escaped. The Holocaust resulted in nearly 10 million deaths. After the liberation and persecution of Jews and other minorities, the groups faced returning home due to their anti-Semitism and trauma they endured.
The Holocaust was the first major publication of the ideologies of anti-Semitism. The actions of Hitler and the Nazis revealed dehumanization, discrimination, and hatred. The Holocaust shocked the entire world and showed the conditions of the mass violence that occurred. This challenged civilians' beliefs and ideologies by exposing them to new, unlawful movements that they had never experienced before.
Although the Holocaust occurred a long time ago, it still continues to have an impact and resonate with society today. The Holocaust is one of the most devastating and dehumanizing documented events. A lot of the world decided to stay silent and watch the hatred and persecution occur. We need to resonate with our mistakes and use it to learn that we, as citizens, should stand up for mistreatment of any group.
The Nazis and their supporters were greatly influenced by Hitler, who supported anti-Semitism. Hitler convinced members and supporters of the Nazi regime that Jews and other minorities' lives were less valuable and that the Aryan race was superior to them. Because people were so heavily influenced by Hitler, some began to trust his ideologies and agree with his harsh rules. He used the propaganda to change citizens' views and make them look to him as a superior leader. Although there were many people that were not in support of the Nazis, they were too fearful to speak against them.
During the dark period of the Holocaust, millions of people were persecuted and murdered by the Nazis. The Nazi regime purposely planned this mass murder by establishing concentration camps and ghettos, using propaganda and implementing policies to have more influence and create their idea of a pure society.
The Holocaust is remembered as a tragic event in history where millions of innocent people lost their lives because of one anti-Semitic group. These horrible actions helped create a new world because we have now learned from those mistakes, but unfortunately, it came with a much higher price.
We send prayers out to the families who were affected. Despite the fact that the Holocaust was a long time ago, it still remains to have an impact on society. This major event had an effect on the lives of many Jews themselves, their families, and many people in different countries around the world. The Holocaust stands as a reminder that our world should never repeat such tragedies again.
Germany unleashed World War II